October 1962. America's defense muscle heads for Florida after President Kennedy's announcement of the weapons blockade of Cuba. Truck convoys roll through Miami, one after another. Then the trains came, 150 cars in length, loaded with troops, tanks, artillery, anti-aircraft missiles. The United States was in the middle of the biggest peacetime military buildup in its history. Many people thought we were at the brink of war, but there was no panic. In Florida, at least, it was clear the president had public opinion behind him. Key West, a quiet tourist retreat, the southernmost city in the continental United States, became a gigantic military camp. The naval base empty, the ships at sea enforcing that blockade. The city only 90 miles from Cuba. The destroyers didn't have far to go. The truck convoys rumbled down the overseas highway, US 1, from Miami to the Keys. Troops came from all over the United States, most of them smiling and waving, almost as if they were tourists themselves. Scenes like these were widely published in northern newspapers, giving the impression the entire state had been occupied by the military. The tourist industry suffered, especially in the Keys. Another popular picture up north, barbed wire on Florida beaches. The first troops to arrive quickly closed off the Key West City Beach, the only one in Florida, incidentally, to get this treatment. And here's what that wire protected: Hawk anti-aircraft missiles and ground-to-air radar devices. WTVJ News had 3 men in Key West during the entire crisis. When these films were made, the cameraman suggested the main office check with the Defense Department just to make certain no security regulation was being violated. We held these films for one day while that check was being made and then ran them. Even with the delay, our viewers saw them first on WTVJ. The seemingly endless buildup continued. At the Opelika airfield, just north of Miami, more troops took over the barracks that hadn't been used since World War II. Residents in Miami had to rely on news film pictures to see what was going on. The base was off limits to civilians. Several dozen emergency field hospitals were moved into Opelika, fully equipped, ready for any action. Ambulance drivers turned an empty field into a smart military formation. There were so many troops in South Florida that Gulfstream Park Racetrack was used to take care of some of the overflow. Elements of the 1st Armored Division from Fort Hood, Texas, were pleased about the arrangement until they learned the racing season was still 4 months away. In Miami, civil defense suddenly became important. Downtown buildings blossomed forth with little markers designating them as public shelters. Civil defense officials decided it was time Miami caught up with the other big cities in this respect. Then WTVJ News broke this exclusive story, causing those same officials considerable embarrassment. We found out that Civil Defense Headquarters was closed on weekends, locked up tight. If you placed a phone call, it was handled by an answering service. There's a full-time CD official on duty now, 24 hours a day, every day. What may be described as an almost mild panic, which touched off when the county manager urged everybody to lay in a 2-week supply of groceries. Chain stores promptly sold out of nearly everything except the shelves. But 9 out of 10 of these shoppers denied they were hoarding or stockpiling. Listen.
How much does this order cost you?
I spent $18.90.
Is this your normal order, or are you stockpiling?
Oh, I'm not stockpiling. I feel that if anything were to happen, you wouldn't be able to eat it anyhow.
WTVJ News exclusively reported that the senior county court juvenile judge took his family and packed them off to Missouri. Then he returned to Miami to find that his action had caused unfavorable comment. Here is how he replied to that criticism.
I do not feel that I have done anything morally wrong by taking my family up to Missouri. I have done what I feel was the best for the protection of my family, and I think these are decisions which every man has to make with regard to his family. I have done nothing wrong. I have no apologies to make for what I have done. I did what any father would do, and that is make a decision what he thought is best for his family.
A WTVJ newsman got the first look at an Iron Curtain country ship cruising along the edge of the Gulf Stream headed south, a big red star on its stack. We knew there were communist vessels heading for Cuba. We knew they would be intercepted by the quarantine line, but didn't know when or where. The Pentagon was not releasing any information. Our newsmen chartered planes and searched the seas themselves. This ship turned out to be a Yugoslav freighter bound for New Orleans, but it was our first film look at a red block ship since the quarantine was imposed. The 1st Armored Division from Fort Hood, Texas, took advantage of our warm air and long beaches. This is a newly activated Army outfit, most of the men inexperienced in making ocean landings. They attempted to come ashore near Fort Pierce, but heavy seas made a landing impossible for a few days. Then the landing craft ran up against a sandbar. Another delay. This soldier volunteered to find out if the other troops could wade ashore. He nearly drowned. Discretion being the better part of valor, the Army waited until high tide before going on with the exercise. It was widely hailed as a war game, but this was a slight exaggeration. The maneuvers were designed simply to give the men experience in landing their heavy equipment, keeping it running in the sand and salt water. The body of the first American casualty arrived in Miami from Cuba. Air Force Major Rudolph Anderson, shot down by a Soviet ground-to-air missile while making a photo reconnaissance flight over Cuba. The coffin was transferred to another plane, bound for Arlington National Cemetery in Washington and a hero's burial. A WTVJ newsman flew to Guantanamo Bay Naval Base on the southeastern tip of Cuba. The wives and children of the servicemen had been moved back to the United States just in case. Thousands of Marines ready for combat patrolled positions along the fence line separating the base from Red Cuba. For months, Castro's guards had thrown rocks at Marine sentries at night. The Marines had strict orders not to return the rock fire. They would not have been unhappy if the word came to move against Cuba. Then, utilizing a specially equipped chartered airplane, WTVJ News monitored Cuban television. It was at this time that Soviet First Deputy Premier Anastas Mikoyan was in Havana, breaking the news to Fidel Castro that Russia was removing its rockets and bombers. Castro tried to appear unruffled. He showed films of a few Russian tanks. WTVJ News again was on the scene when the first of the twin-engine IL-28 bombers were crated and loaded aboard a freighter for the long journey back to Russia. President Kennedy considered these planes offensive weapons. Castro claimed that they were defensive, but he lost. When Khrushchev agreed to pull them out, Castro said it really didn't matter because they were too old and too slow. But the immediate crisis now appeared over.